Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
A lot of us say we never have enough of this, and others will say, yes, you do. And I'm not talking about money. I am talking about time. There are many that say you have the time. You just have to arrange it or manage it in a certain way that it's beneficial to whatever your goal is. We're going to talk about time management today. I can't wait. I'm challenged by this all the time, no pun intended, in getting things done. And she's an expert at helping people organize their lives, businesses, everything. Organizational solutions is what she's all about. Janet Jackson joins us here on the program. Hey, Janet, how are you?
Hi, thank you. I'm fine. How are you?
Thank you for making the time to be
Of
here.
course.
Why do you think people struggle with this whole thing?
Because we're all flipping busy. That's what it boils down to. When you say you're challenged with this all the time, I'm kind of like, who isn't? I mean, I'm the quote unquote expert, and it is, you have to be super intentional about it, or else I don't want to say you're going to fail, but you're going to struggle with it. If you are not super intentional with it, you will struggle. And it can't be something that you do once. It's something you're constantly evaluating is how you're using your time, I think. So, and a lot of people don't want to spend that kind of time figuring out how they're going to manage their days.
It's conjuring up some images in my mind in that in the last 3 or so years, I've kind of changed my mindset in a way where I used to worry about things. Oh my God, how are you going to do? I got to take care of this, take care of that. So I kind of tap the brakes and chilled out a little bit and live in the moment. And they say you should live in the moment. You shouldn't always be worrying about the past, the future. It supports you better when you're just here, just present in the moment. Fantastic. It's very beneficial. However, when you're living in the moment, you're not worrying about the stuff that's coming up. And then you have time management issues. And I'm kind of there at that crossroad where I don't want to go crazy about scheduling and worrying about things scheduled. I want to just live and enjoy. But at the same time, I find myself worrying about time that how am I going to fit that in? How can I do that? Let me squeeze that. I have a friend of mine. She always says, do you realize that you drive fast? You're always like, bouncing all over the place. And I'm a Virgo. I like to think I'm very organized, but I try to squeeze things in at the last minute. Like if I have a meeting or I'm coming back to the office, stop for a cup of coffee. I'm going to do it. I'm going to see if I can do it. It's almost like a challenge. I wonder if other people are challenged by things like that.
I think some of us are just wired that way. We're very driven. Sorry. We're very driven. And so we try to squeeze in as much as we can, not just in our workday, but in life in general. I'll bet if you were to step back and look at your life, it's not just work stuff. You're squeezing in lots of play and
oh yeah,
time with friends, social stuff. We don't want to miss a minute. I've got a friend who laughs at me or has observed that about me, is that like I don't waste a minute. I live life full throttle. And so some of us are wired that way. I think it's important to embrace that about yourself, not beat yourself up, not wish you were something different. And if you're not wired that way, that's okay too. Enjoy who you are and know that those of us like Steve and I wish we were more like you sometimes. If you're not, if you don't feel like you're living or doing as much as maybe your neighbor.
All that said, I know in my gut that life would be better if I came up with some kind of a better system, but I don't know how to approach that. So let's talk about that.
Absolutely. Well, if it's okay, I kind of want to just make a reference to the podcast we had previously on organization, because when you talked about you're keeping things in your head, that was one of the big things that I talked about, is creating a to-do system. So you don't have to keep all of this stuff in your head. Your system is going to remind you, which does let you focus on what's right in front of you, because your system, what you have in place, is going to remind you of what's coming up. So as much as we can get things out of our head, the more we can live in the present without forgetting something.
This is so true. Yes, you're right. You can live in the present because or you're confident, or you have faith in your system that it's going to support you and make sure that you don't forget something, that things are getting taken care of. Um, do we apply that to this now, or do you have other tips to
It
better
does.
time manage?
I think they 100% go hand in hand. I often say you can't be organized until you have control of your day, and you can't have control of your day until you're organized. Like you can't separate those two.
Yeah.
So, um, uh, so anyway, so having that some kind of a system that's going to help you know what work you have to do and when you have to do it, that's a huge piece to to what we're talking about here, to better time management, to focusing on the things that matter. Um, the other thing that, when I talk about this, I kind of like to start at the macro level and just encourage someone to look at their life again from a hot air balloon, just a global level. In fact, I'll give them I give them a little piece of paper. I do a workshop on this, which, as we've talked about before, I have an e-learning site. So if anyone is listening to me this session or the last podcast we did and want to go deeper on these topics, I do have an e-learning site where these sessions are recorded and available for anyone to watch at any time, and get even more tips and strategies.
Fantastic. I love tips. I need somebody to show me the way. That's the way it is. Yeah, like
Exactly. Right. Exactly. And so anyway, when we look at our lives from at a macro level, I would encourage you to we take a piece of paper. There's an image of a person, really of a juggler, um, on this piece of paper, and then there's just plates all around that juggler. And I tell everyone, think about your life, the whole life, work, kids, spouse, volunteer activities, hobbies, everything. And each plate, I call them bubbles actually, but each bubble gets one of those things. So if you've got three kids, there's probably three bubbles, and maybe those kids, maybe you're involved in one of the booster organizations with one of those kids, so that gets another bubble. And your work may have a lot of different hats that you're wearing, so those are all different bubbles. Maybe you're involved in your church, that gets a bubble. So get it on paper, and then we just talk about it in the class. Is okay, how do you feel now that you're seeing that on a piece of paper and all these bubbles that you're juggling? How are you feeling? And can you, Steve, do you want to guess at what some of the observations might be?
in terms of every bubble and what they
Yeah,
are.
just looking at it. Yeah, looking at it on kind of a one-page summary. If we were to
Um,
put all your bubbles on a piece of paper.
I'm thinking about what the bubbles are. I'm doing a visual
Mhm,
in my mind
mhm.
what they are. Um, there's so many of them.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, let me ask you this. Do you think you have too many bubbles or too few,
I
or the right amount?
I don't have the right amount, or I wouldn't be having this conversation with you. I would say I need more because my day is scattered, and I'll be doing this, but then I have some time open. So let me do this. Now I'm back to doing this. Oh, wait, I've got a little bit more time. Let me do this over here. So I kind of squeeze it in, but
So you've got a lot of bubbles that you're juggling.
yeah,
So when we think about the different roles and functions that you're doing, you're keeping a lot of bubbles in the air,
yeah, yeah.
right?
And
Um,
and I put stuff off because I'm just like bad. Sending an email. It's just I got to send an email. I'm not in the frame of mind to think about the logistics because it needs to be, and there's responsibility involved. I need to kind of dictate what needs to happen in a certain situation. So honestly, I'll procrastinate. I'll put that off a little bit. I did it. I did it last night. I just wasn't in the frame of mind to
Yeah,
think.
and that's okay. I don't think you have to respond to things immediately. But where I'm going with this bubble exercise is a lot of us, a lot of the women, especially that I work with, but I don't doubt that men are in the same boat. We overcommit. We're involved in too many things. We're trying to be everything in our kids' schools. We're trying to be on three different boards in our community, and yet we're doing our role at the organization. So that's what I try to have them do,
Well,
is just looking at this macro look, like, is it even realistic for you to be successful in all of these bubbles? And then having
Hmm.
that critical conversation, maybe you need to let one of those volunteer. You can't drop a kid, right? That's a bubble you got to hang on to. But maybe you don't have to be
Get it.
involved in every booster organization, every kid's booster organization, or maybe you don't have to be involved in the nonprofit that you're passionate about,
Oh yeah.
or maybe you scale it back. Maybe you recognize, hey, right now my focus is on my kids. I'm gonna volunteer with this when they're older.
I'm right there with you. Single dad, on the board of the Girl Scouts, on the board of this, on the board of that. And there's so many times where I will think to myself, even if I'm not connected to an organization, I just have a conversation and I'm thinking, oh, wait, I can help them out with that. Like even in church, in terms of I'm an audiovisual geek. I've been doing it since I was a kid, literally a kid. And oh, I have a great idea. And I'm like, stop, Steve, stop, because you can't commit to something else. You know it can work. And I even had the conversation with the pastor of the church on Sunday. Hey guys, did you ever think about doing this and da da da? He goes, yeah, we need a professional help us with that. I'm like, I don't have time for that.
Oops.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, it's overextending. You're
It
overextending.
is. And so many people do that, and then they beat themselves up because they're not getting things done. Well, what you've set yourself up for failure. You can't possibly have success because you are stretched way too thin. And I am not judging. I am speaking from experience. I joke that I introduce myself as, hi, I'm Janet Jackson, and I'm a recovering overcommitter. Um, because it is a
Mm.
daily struggle. And Steve, I feel like you and I are wired so similarly.
Okay,
I'm
can
the
I tell you? Can I tell you real quick? I
Yeah,
say I'm Steve. I'm a reformed Virgo because Virgo traits are organization, planning, perfectionism, and I let a lot of that go. And I'm trying to get some of it back in terms of the organization, time management. But
yeah,
yes, I got you.
perfect. Yeah, perfect. Exactly.
Mm,
Because we want to help. I think our heart's desire is to help people. And when we see a situation where we think we could step in and improve, like at your church,
yeah.
we want to. So we jump in. But what I had to realize when my daughter was young was me saying yes to everybody else. What was I leaving for my family?
Or you,
Right?
or you.
For me, yes, for the things that were the most important. I wasn't succeeding anywhere. I was killing myself trying to. And at the end of the day, the thing that was the most important to me was the one that was getting sacrificed. And that didn't make any sense at all. So I stopped volunteering. I would tell you my church, especially back then, would be the first to tell you, yeah, she's she is practicing what she preaches. No pun intended.
Mm,
Um, but
yeah.
anyway,
Eh,
so that's in this exercise, then looking at these bubbles, identify which ones you can't let go of, which ones potentially you can let go of, and identifying at the end of the day, on your on at your funeral, just like Steve Covey talks about, begin with the end in mind. At your funeral, what do you want people to have thought about you? They were a great board member, they were a great parent, and I don't know what people's answers are, right? But you
mhm.
have to decide what you want your answer to be, and then you make decisions in your life with your time, commitments, resources that propel you towards that.
So let's say you've got the right amount of bubbles. It's
Hmm.
maybe you're pushing it a little bit, but it's okay.
Right.
How do we work the bubbles?
Perfect segue, Steve. So yeah, the next level then is once you know what you need to be focusing on, what's important to you, what I will coach, of course, there's goal setting. I'm not necessarily one I can facilitate strategic planning and do all of that. Um, but there are so many resources out there to help you with goal setting. But then if we think about your life on a month by month basis, so we'll take me as an example. I'm a solopreneur. I do have a couple people on my team now, but for 20 years, a solopreneur. I do the marketing. I do the administrative work. I do the sales work. I do the product development, and I am the product. So I'm consulting and I'm training. So I wore all those things.
Yep.
So I had to think about how much time do I want to allocate each month to those activities. And then I literally have just like a month planner, I mean, it's just a one sheet of a month. And it tells me like this isn't necessarily my shtick, but it would tell me that, okay, the first Monday of every month in the afternoon, that's when I'm going to focus on marketing efforts for the month. So I can sit down. I'm not worrying about the emails that are coming in. I'm not struggling, trying to do all these other things. I have carved out and set aside in my calendar that time for marketing work so that I can grab. We talked last time about separating your ideas from the things you have to do. So this is my idea work time. So I'll grab the things that I've collected for working on when it comes to marketing, and I will use that time to work on marketing. And for me, once a month is sufficient. Bigger, other people, different roles. You have to figure out what your allocation needs to be. But take the bubble exercise that you did and determine how much time do you need to spend on these activities in a month, and then plan your month that way so that you aren't scheduling meetings on Monday, the first Monday of the month.
I think the bubbles are effective because it shows you what you've got to work with, and you have to work with it. This is you have to make it work. So how are you going to make it work? And then taking them and putting, even if it's on a daily basis, coming up with a routine. There are some people that wake up very early in the morning. Pains me to say they're very successful, and I don't really want to get up that early, but they get a lot done, and that works for them. Checking email first thing in the morning, doing this first thing in the morning. It's quiet time, not a lot of craziness. Got an hour to focus there as well. Have your breakfast during it or whatever. But coming up with that whole system.
Yes. The routine. Exactly.
Yeah.
If you remember, we started this podcast, me talking about being intentional. We're all challenged. We're all busy. But if you aren't intentional about how you're going to manage these things, you're going to end each day frustrated.
Yeah. Yeah. And things pop up like
Right.
things you didn't plan on.
I'm glad you said that, because something you said earlier triggered something for me. And I was going to say this when we talked about that to-do system, or even these routines that we have in place that we're talking about. It's important. It's important for your success, right? Because you're working on the right things. Let me tell you, it's also important when you get to seasons of life that completely pull the rug right out from under you. So my dad was dying of cancer. This was about in 2016. He was dying of cancer. He lived in the state adjacent to mine. So all of a sudden, I didn't care about any of my work, right? I was going over to Indiana a couple times a week to be with my dad and to care for him. So what my system allowed me to do was to look at it and know what I wasn't going to get done that day. So I could look at my to-do system, look at my list of things that I needed to accomplish, or look at my calendar and say, okay, this I have to do. So I have to knock out these couple things before I walk out the door, but the rest of these are just going to get redistributed. So it gives you space for handling the unexpected, even better,
Really
it gives you
great
space
point.
for handling the unexpected.
It's a really great point. Yeah, because life happens. The challenge, I believe, as we're talking, is relying on other people. Relying on other people. If they don't do what they're expected to do, then that impacts you. So right away, like I'll tell you, the part of my life is I do a radio show. Been doing radio since I was 17. I rely on them to send the music log so I can record. I record in advance, trade secret. I'm not live, so I can be here with you. But if they don't send the log over, I can't do it. Now I have to plug in something else, which is fine. I got other things to do. But I think it goes back to setting the boundaries, where that you set boundaries for yourself, whether it's self-care. I'm going for a massage this weekend. Saturday, Sunday, I'm going to find an hour. I haven't gone in forever. And I just said, that's me. That's my, not that expensive. It's for me. But setting even me waiting for a music log to record something, I need it by 10 a.m., whatever it is, the day before, and that's what's needed. We need to set those boundaries. I don't think we do as often as we should.
Right. Oh, I completely agree. I think so many people just live reactively. They just kind of show up and take what the day gives them instead of going into it with a plan, and this is what my day needs to look like. And if I know what my plan is, I'm so much more equipped to handle the surprises.
How
So
about some other ideas, tips, things that we can do, things that work for you? I know you're a
yeah,
big proponent of
well,
Google Calendars. We talked about last time, right?
Outlook. Sorry,
Outlook, my bad.
we can help with Google, but yes, but Google works too. Like whatever calendar system that you use. So what
Sure.
I want to. We're going to get to that, but I want to kind of circle back to something that you said, like you're taking
Sure.
some time out for you. And I said earlier in the podcast that I live life full throttle, like I'm working and I'm playing and I'm hanging out with people, but I am super intentional to take a day of rest. So for me, that's on Sundays. And I don't work on Sundays. I do my best to have zero commitments on Sundays. I mean, I would say 99% of the time I have zero commitments on Sunday. You can find me on my couch, taking it cuddled up with my dog, taking a nap or reading a book or watching football. Um, just taking that day of rest. And if I don't have that day of rest, my productivity suffers
Hmm.
the next week
Hmm.
significantly. So
Wow.
taking time for yourself. It's interesting. There's a book. The book is called Burnout by Emily and Amelia Nagoski. I had to look at my bookshelf. It's called Burnout, and they talk about the importance of rest for just
Hmm.
for all kinds of things.
Oh,
And it completely supports what I've been doing for years and years.
I,
So
I can't
have
believe you're
that day of
saying this.
rest.
I can't believe you're saying this because that's what I started doing. I'll keep it real short, but I'm always moving. I'm always doing stuff, even hanging out with friends, hanging out with, whatever. I'm always going. I never take that time because I always thought, well, you're just lazy if you're not taking that time. You're just, you keep moving, keep doing. In the last, say, 4 months, I started doing that where I look forward to it, but I flip the mindset in that I am being productive because by doing nothing, I'm recharging all of this and more ideas come out of this because I'm fresh and clear. And Sunday mornings are my thing. I wake up. Sometimes I'll do it on a Saturday, depending on the weather. I stay in bed, watch a little TV, DoorDash Dunkin' Donuts, get a sandwich and a coffee. And that is now my thing. That's my, $20, $18 treat. That's my thing. And I even had a friend, hey, let's get together. And she's a dear friend. She needs some help with her marketing. I'm like, she's like, let's get together. We haven't, talked in a while. We used to get together. I'm like, okay. Weekends are probably best for me because to figure it all out. She goes, well, maybe we can meet, before church on Sunday. And I'm like, boundary. And like, no, because that means now I'm going to be out the door at like 8:30. No, I'm going to be just chilling, sleeping late.
Yep.
I stuck to it.
Perfect. That's beautiful, Steve. That is wonderful. I
Took a
think the
lot for me to get there.
concept,
I have to be
it
honest.
does. It does. But the concept of being unscheduled, like we don't even it's hard for us to
Oh,
wrap our mind around it. But to be unscheduled is such a healthy thing we can do for ourselves.
it's a gift.
It
It's
is.
I
Yes.
can't even I can't even put it into words what it feels like when you're unscheduled and you just everything is fluid and free and do you know what? I'm going to mop the floor. Why not? I don't have anything else to do and it's got to get done. But
Right.
now it's going to be fun because I don't have to worry about it. And it's not scheduled. Whatever that is. Insert
Right.
whatever.
You're free to do whatever you want to do when you want to do it.
Free to
Exactly.
be.
On that day, on that boundary. So,
Hmm,
yep,
interesting.
exactly.
A couple of minutes left. Any final
Yep.
thoughts?
Yeah, just then we talked about macro level, we talked about the month level, we talked about the importance of a day of rest, and then just talking about your work days. Everybody thinks multitasking is fantastic. It is not. I'm here to tell you it's a myth. You cannot do two things at once. What you're doing is you are actually, we could do a whole exercise, but you are actually taking longer to do the task than if you just focused on one thing, finished it, and then moved on to the next thing. Multitasking is a myth.
Hmm.
Reduce interruptions. So again, I have a whole spiel on interruptions, but what I'll share with your listeners right now is just these words. Remember, you teach what you allow. You teach what you allow. So if you constantly
Hmm.
let people interrupt you, you will continue to be interrupted. If you learn to redirect them and say, hey, could you send that to me via email, or could you schedule a time to chat with me? You are teaching them, don't interrupt me because I'm just going to send you away.
3 words. It can wait.
It can wait. Yes, exactly. And then the last one, we already talked about having a to-do system. The last one is just don't underestimate the power of a simple timer. And I like the timer on my phone, but I like just a visual one on my desk even better, because you can use that for all kinds of strategies. It helps you focus. It helps you dive into something you don't want to do. If you say, I'm just going to set the timer for 15 minutes and work on it, and then I'm going to be done, etc. So
can't believe you said that, because I just bought one, and here's the remote control for it. It was $25. I'm staring at it now. I would take the camera and show you. However, I have underneath it passwords to Wi-Fi and things like that. Don't want to show those, but right. I can press one button like that and start it. And that's what it is huge. It is, it's got to be at least 2 feet by maybe 6. You can't miss it. You can see, like, I love it. And it's got the days of the week. It's got the date if you ever need that, and the temperature as well, but it's huge. So yeah, very best $25 spent, really.
Absolutely. The timer, it is my favorite. It is my favorite organizing and time management gadget. Of all the apps, all the gadgets, a simple timer is my favorite.
Timer says we're out of time.
Okay.
It really does.
Perfect.
How do we connect? If this is resonating with somebody and they just got to get their lives together and just figure this all out, you have so many different resources to help, whether it's e-learning or whether it's one-on-one. How do we find you?
The easiest way to find me is to go to my website. It is organizationsolutionsllc.com. I do have a Linktree account. That's just simply OSLLC, so you could find me there as well. But either of those places should help you find me. I'm on LinkedIn. You can, if you want to Google Janet Jackson, you're going to have to put a little bit more with it. If you put Janet Jackson Organization Solutions, you'll find me. So I'm out there. Yeah, I'd love to help.
Yep. No pun here, but it is worth the time, because it's your life. It's a game changer. And some of the things, I'm starting to get, but it's taken me years to figure out. If I would have called you so much sooner, I would have figured these out, wait. And there's much more to figure out. Janet, thank you for all the details. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's been fun.
We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.